Hey guys, this is miicrow. I wanted to do a quick video on what all the caps are for certain perk buckets in New World because this is a topic that basically comes up every single time a new update comes out and people tend to get confused. This is viewable in the status effect categories uh, file within the game if you data mine the game. Uh, but the best spot to probably find this is like datasheets.yaml. Zone does a good job keeping these up to date and updates it like right away. So you can basically just diff the commits using git, and then from there, like I use git lens for example, which is a extension for VS Code, and then you can figure out what changes actually happened. So that's on the left here. I have the old patch. On the right here, I have the new patch. You'll notice that the only ones that are changed are down here in the bottom that are green, and I'll get to those at the end. But they aren't the most impactful changes. It's just kind of some new effects that got added to the game, and they needed to kind of cover their bases here. So without further ado, I kind of wanted to get into it and explain what all these do, or at least from what I know of them. So first we have stun. I mean, this is just if you get stunned, it's an effect. There's no limit on how long you could be stunned for, like anything like that. It's you get an opportunity to get a breakout roll after you've been stunned. I believe it's like 2 times or something like that, and then you have an opportunity to get a breakout roll. Or if you get stunned while you're stunned, or like something along those lines, you get an opportunity to get a breakout roll. And that is a useful tech in terms of PvP, but there's no actual limit on stun. In terms of slow, this also affects haste. So the inverse of slow is haste, right? So the main thing here is that your limit is 50%. That's what the negative 0.5 means. Root, there's no limit. Silence, there's no limit. Also, I don't think we really have silence effects in the game besides like maybe in PvE, but not in PvP right now. So it's kind of interesting that this exists. But it's been there for a while. We got Rend. Uh, this is old Rend. So there was Rend when the game first came out, and then this got converted into Armor Rend. There's not actually many things that use the Rend category anymore. And like one way to check what categories are currently being used is if you go to New World Buddy and you go to status effects, and then you see this effect categories. If I just search for Rend here, so you see how there's armor Rend and normal Rend and non-dispellable Rend and like these other random forms of Rend that are kind of odd. If I just search for Rend, there's not many of these, and the ones that exist tend to be PvE oriented. So there's nothing like from a direct ability here that's applying to Rend. Like it's just general Rend, right? This is like just a PvE mob that's doing it. So like the Motherwell elk, like I don't, they haven't touched those. So there's some things like that that are kind of noteworthy, and it's something that you can kind of look up to, and is a little helpful. But old Rend had a cap of 30%. New Rend, which is armor based Rend, has a cap of 70%. And on the flip side, I believe your Fortify has a cap of 2, which is 200%. And the graph for armor tends to be a little bit non-linear. I wonder if I could pull up a Desmos thing for you guys and just kind of show this to you. Or I could show it in the Discord too, where I keep these. So if you go to my Discord, you go to New World Resources. In here, I have random Desmos graphs, which are kind of nice. This one with Featherweight is a good reference. The armor to damage mitigation is also a good reference. If you look at armor to damage mitigation, this is like what the formula looks like in terms of how you convert this new Fortify over to direct damage mitigation. I just changed this from 700 to 725 because now 725 is the max gear score, and it will behave like it should. So it's like if I have 3000 armor, right, I have 52% damage mitigation, which means I'm taking 48% of the damage that's incoming. Like that's how you need to read this. So when you're like looking at like how much is a Rend really worth, what Rend will do is say I'm at like 3000. So we can actually draw this out. So if I do x equals 3000, right? And let's make this a different color so it's a little bit easier to see. Like make it orange. You can see how that's 52%. So if I were to multiply this and say I have a 20% rend on me, what a 20% rend on me would do was it would effectively reduce your armor by 20%. So you could write it as 0.8, you could write it as 1 minus 0.2, which, 20% rend. If you had a fortify on you, it would be adding to that. So I went from 52 to 47, right? So overall net, I'm taking, what, 5% more damage? Or not 5% more damage, but the absolute damage mitigation was reduced by 5%. The actual effective damage that I'm taking went from 52 to 47, which is effectively I'm taking about 10% more damage when I have a 20% rend put on me. And this 3,000 number is about what you get in heavy. So that's why I say all the time, it's like, hey, if you're a heavy player and you have a fortifier on you, or if you have a rend on you, just take that number, divide it by 2, and that's approximately what the actual damage mitigation will be, and that just kind of proves it too there. So kind of a fun thing there, but good to know, good reference. Fortify, we already kind of talked about this a little bit, but there was Rend back in the day, there was Fortify back in the day. Fortify had a 50% cap, that was replaced by Armor Fortify, which we just went through, which has a 200% cap. If you look at the actual graph too, you're not getting, your base value will be capped at somewhere around 3,000-ish, maybe 3,500. So a 200% cap would be 10,000. If you actually look at this though, it's it clearly, the line, it's going up pretty quickly, and then it just falls off in terms of its slope. So there's a soft cap on here. It's not just a hard cap, unlike everything else in the game, which tends to have a hard cap in terms of how it scales, because everything else kind of scales and more so it's a multiplicative manner for everything else, versus this is a little bit more logarithmic, was how I would describe the scaling. So quadratic versus logarithmic, it would, well, I don't know if quadratic would be the right word, but it's multiplicative scaling that which compounds effectively with other buckets, versus log-based scaling. And log-based scaling basically just means that you're not going to get as much value per perk. Technically, this isn't a log-based scaling. No, this is called sigmoid scaling, and it's a special thing. The reason why games tend to use this, Throne of Liberty uses this for references. Sigmoid scaling is it acts like log, so it has that fall-off mechanic, but it's a lot less computationally intensive if you set it up right. This exponential is kind of a stupid thing to have here, because this will make it computationally more expensive, but the idea of having 1 over 1 plus a factor, that factor here tends to be less computationally intensive. So as long as this x over 725 times 1 or to the power 1.2 was pre-calculated, which I guess it can't do because you don't know x, then it would not be as computationally intensive, and that's the reason why companies tend to use that. In terms of other effects here, damage standard. This is also known as ABS. A lot of people like to throw that term around, which is just absolute damage mitigation. Standard damage corresponds to bleeds and a few heart runes, and it's capped at 50%. Standard damage tends to match directly with Onyx's. The one off case for this is the crown, for some reason, gives you more standard damage mitigation than it does for other stuff, which is kind of a bug that we talked about in the Discord today. And I could probably show it on New World Buddy too. It's kind of interesting. But if you search for the crown, which is a new artifact that came out, and then you look at the Onyx on here, you see how it says ABS standard 0.4? That's supposed to match the 0.3, but someone made a typo and that ended up in the game. So I guess you're a little bit more, you're a little bit more protected from bleeds if you really care about that with the crown, but it's just a small bug. It doesn't really affect that much. Just kind of interesting. We have empower cap. It says 1.5 here. This is as a standard, your damage starts at a 1. So when this says 1.5, this should be 50%. 50% is the empower cap. So it just it looks a little bit differently, because the fortify, it says 2, and this is actually 200%. For this, it starts at 1, you go to 150 with a maximum empower. you go to 50% with or 0.5 with having maximum weaken. Disease has a cap of 0.5. Kind of noteworthy. There's a lot more disease effects that have come out recently. Haste has a cap of 0.5. We don't really care about the AI effects. It doesn't really matter, and there's no limit anyway. Non-dispellable debuff, there's no limit, no limit, no limit, so we're just going to skip these. A mutator empower. So this is like your bosses. Like bosses in New World, it's kind of weird how they code them. They code them to have like a flat damage, and then they just give them a crap ton of empower, which means that you could apply like, in theory, almost infinite weaken, and it doesn't really matter that much, or it doesn't break the game because they have so much empower. There's like, you effectively won't hit the weaken cap in PvE, and this is 5, so it's like, you know, bosses could have a ton of empower potentially. It's just whatever the devs choose for that particular boss. These are random mutator effects that I probably won't go into a bunch, but the disease, you could have in theory 100% disease on you, so you wouldn't be able to heal at all. Curses we don't care about. Anointed. Anointed is like outgoing heal, so think of like blessed on your life staff, for example. That would be under anointed. What that means is you could have 100%, like a maximum of 100% outgoing heal bonus. So, and that outgoing heal bonus will apply to anyone that a player heals. So it's like, if I'm a player, let me draw this out real quick. This one's probably, or getting to the point where it will start getting better for me to explain this stuff a little bit visually. How anointed works is, if I'm a player, like if I'm this square, and I want to heal this triangle over here, when I heal, anointed gets applied from my outgoing to this player. Anointed would also get applied if I healed myself, right? So that's how anointed works. It's like, works for incoming, it works for outgoing. Effectively, it's just like the same thing as saying outgoing healing, I guess. Like, that would be probably the simplest way to explain anointed. I don't know why they chose a fancy name, but they did. Unclamped slow. Honestly, I don't know what this is used for, but I could show you how to figure out how stuff is used. So, New World Buddy, again, great tool. Shout out to Genie who made it. Go to effect categories, just search for the thing, and then we could find examples of perks that have this. So this looks like a random PvE based slow effect that I've never heard of before. Yeah, so random AI slow effect that exists in the game for some reason. But it has a cap. I'm guessing all this unclamp stuff is just PvE oriented, so you could have a bunch of Rend on you. They could have a bunch of Fortify if they wanted to. So it's just whatever they want in PvE they could have. So I'm just going to skip over this unclamped stuff. Fishing buffs, so you know, you can get some fishing buffs in the game depending on certain events and stuff. They got special fishing buffs. Got Hardy, which is, I don't really know too much about the status effect either, but we can look it up. There's some big ones that are important. Some of these other ones that are like kind of weird, you don't just see as much. Hail and Hardy. Oh, so it's just that unique effect where you get like the incoming healing over time, isn't it? Yeah, it's just tagged as Hardy. So, increase. Oh, this is the old stuff. Oh, this is really old. So you know how in the beginning of the game, how you can buy a guild buff and it would give everyone a base HP increase, and then eventually they're like, you know, this is kind of stupid. Let's just make that part of your base HP, which is now 8,024, and like take the effect away. So that's what happened to this, and apparently that's just like a legacy thing that was left in the game but never deleted. Which, you know, kind of makes sense. If you don't want to accidentally break the game, don't just randomly delete things. Non-dispellable weakens. So these are weakens that you just can't get rid of, and there's a cap of those at 50%. I don't think there's a bunch of these in terms of PvE, or in terms of PvP at this point. I have too many tabs open. This is starting to get weird. We look through here. Oh wait, I have this as an ore. Oh, so I've been showing you guys way too many effects. So non-dispellable weaken, immune to all heal. Oh, so this is like when you use the heart rune, it gives you a special weaken. Like if you use stone form, it gives you a special weaken that you can't get rid of. So there's a few of these. Defiant Stance and Great Sword is another case of it. Void Gauntlet's tether. That's interesting. So that's a non-dispellable weaken, and the reason why that's relevant is it means that you can bypass the weaken cap with the tether effect on Void Gauntlet. So that's kind of an interesting one I didn't know about till today, but now you guys know that too. Non-dispellable Empower works pretty similarly. Uh, kind of curious now after seeing that weaken one if we could find a weird case for non-dispellable Empower that we can take advantage of at all. It's just honing stones. Okay. Yeah. So honing stones are relevant for that. Uh, Arena honing stones, battle bread. So all that matters for this is like with battle bread, you just straight up get a damage increase that isn't affected by any other damage cap, right? So it's pretty good. Bloodlust is on this. That's really cool. Um, that's really cool. So that would mean that Bloodlust, in theory, could bypass the Empower cap. I'd probably want to test this just to make sure. Uh, I thought Bloodlust gave you base damage though, and this is corresponding to. No, this is Empower. No, I'm completely wrong. No, this is Empower. But because this is in the non-dispellable power bucket, it would apply. It would have this separate modifier for the Empower, which means that you could just get straight up more damage if you have Bloodlust and still have Empower that like kind of goes over that. So that's kind of a neat a thing to learn there. Detonate has that as well, which means that ideally with Detonate you want to be using it and you want to be getting another 50% Empower for something else. It doesn't look like anything else here. Onslaught stance, okay, that's noteworthy. This is a PvE effect. What is this? Oh, this is a Conqueror item. The Conqueror stuff isn't in the game anymore. Tether. So Tether, in theory, would bypass the Empower cap too. So Tether seems like the stonks are pretty good, assuming stuff works like it is showing in the datamine. Again, something that probably is worth testing in game just to confirm. But from the datamine perspective, that's kind of a fun thing to look at there. We got CC duration. This has, in theory, has a cap. There was a different CC thing that we looked at earlier and it didn't have a cap, so this is kind of interesting. I'm learning with you guys as well along with this, which is why I'm taking time to look stuff up, because I actually haven't like done a deep dive through this before, or like not a completely deep dive. Oh, this is just heavy, light, and medium. So like with these bonuses, they that give you a CC duration change, they aren't the same as like freedom, for example. So I don't know if you guys remember, this is like for kind of an old New World player thing. But back in the day, people used to say, "Oh, you need to have 4-piece freedom so that you can get out of any CC combo in the game from like a Great Axe and like a Warhammer." And then they changed it so it was part of an equip load. But a lot of people were like, "Oh, so I could have the heavy equip load into freedom, and that would effectively be the same." And it's technically different because you have this 0.2, right? So this is 80%. And then that 80% is then multiplied by whatever freedom effect that you have, which tends to be 0.11 per freedom. And then it's like however many freedoms you have, like say I have 2 freedoms, so it'd be a 2 multiple there, and then that would multiply out and would actually turn out to be less than the 44 percent, or I guess it would be 56% that you're looking for in terms of CC duration to actually get you out of those combos. So that's where that's relevant. We have energized. This is stam regen. There's a few effects with this, but I don't think any are super noteworthy. There is like a new chess piece perk that gives you an effect like this, and it's kind of nice. Exhaust is the opposite, where it will decrease your stamina. It has a cap of 50%. This unclap thing, again, this is PvE, unclapped exhaust, PvE. Spore offense, spore defense. I'm pretty sure this is just something like strictly related to Elysian Wild, so we don't really worry about that too much. Shriveled is an effect that I have not heard of before. I imagine this is a PvE only effect. Okay, it doesn't even... Oh, it's poison? Huh. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Okay. Um, So that's relevant to the blunderbuss, I guess. So that might have its own weakened thing, so or its own disease, so it might bypass the disease cap. So I guess that's kind of interesting. That's artifact BB related. I don't want to talk about mammoths right now because that's not relevant. Non-dispellable slows. I don't think this is anything that has to do with PvE, so I'm just going to skip past that. Travel haste, we don't probably care about a ton here. Taunt is PvE oriented, but there's no cap. ABS cap 90%. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what this is. I saw this in here earlier today, and I was like really confused because I've never heard of this before. I was like, why is the ABS cap 90%? Like, I thought it was a 50%. Apparently this applies to an AI effect though, so I don't think it's super relevant. ABS's cap should be 50%. It's weird because you don't see it directly in here. And like this has ABS standard. Oh, no, I think we did see it, right? We saw ABS standard earlier. Yeah, for like the old Rend and stuff, but ABS should be a 50% cap. Like if we look up a opal, for example, immaculate opal, and then on here it should show this is a different kind of opal. It should show the caps on here somewhere, which I don't think it's showing, but ABS cap should be 50%. There is it might just be somewhere else or be like hidden somewhere. There is like a weird spot in PvE at one point that I'm not sure if it's still relevant, where you could get above the 50% cap, and then it would round, like if you got above the 50% cap with just your gems, it would round it at, like it would take that a cap into consideration like after all those added, so like other effects in terms of like conditioning wouldn't apply to get you above it even more, but you could in theory have over 50% damage mitigation. It was kind of relevant at one point, but it's not relevant in terms of PvP at all, so I kind of ignore that, but it's mostly a PvE optimization kind of interaction. So those are the kind of interesting ones. All those were stuff that existed in the game. And then last part here, just wanted to go over some of the new ones. There's non-dispellable Rend. This is pretty much just specific to the new tower shield that was added. So if we go back to status effects on New World Buddy, go here, get rid of the old one, add in non-dispellable Rend. Oh wait, no, this isn't that. This is for the CTF mode. So the flag is going to reduce all your armor by 50%, and it's going to reduce your move speed and your maximum sprint speed. So you're basically pretty slow. And you probably will want tanky people on the flag, but it's going to be harder to live, right? Like your stamina regen slower, your heal modifier is slower, so you're not going to get healed as much. There's a armor is reduced, your empower is reduced, so it's like you're not doing damage, you're taking more damage, you're not moving very fast. So it's like the idea is that you need a whole team to really escort you out, right? And that's going to be like one of the gimmicks with the CTF map, but it's kind of cool that these are in the game too. Also your block damage reduction is reduced, which is kind of interesting, but probably not super relevant. There's non-dispellable armor Rend. We can look up what has that one as well. So these are all the new effects. I don't know anything about these yet. I imagine no one has seen these yet. So this doesn't even have an effect yet in the game, so we can ignore that. It's got non-dispellable fortify. Which if I look here, it's relevant to like some random event that I haven't really heard of. Wait, is this important? Like, is this something new? Because this has come up a few times. While active, you transform into a lost monarch and gain increased damage reduction. I'm just going to skip over this for now because I don't really know what it is. Oh, it's Conqueror related? Oh, never mind. Conqueror stuff was just exclusive to the PvP like stuff last patch, and it's not really relevant anymore. Non-dispellable armor fortify. Not relevant. Doesn't exist yet. Non-dispellable disease. If this stuff doesn't exist though, that also hints that they might be adding something in the future with this effect. It's kind of relevant, kind of cool. This is just the flag stuff. So it looks like this is just stuff that was mostly added for the flag. The non-dispellable haste was added for the flag. We've already seen that. So that's not anything there. Non-dispellable anointed. So it's like all these are technically separate buckets, but it's all those flag modifiers. So what that basically means is you can gain haste on top of this, but you're not going to be able to like get rid of that flag slow, right? Like you can't really bypass it at all. And it's non-dispellable, so you can't get rid of it with like a cleanse pot or anything like that. So you're just gonna have to deal with it. So I thought this was kind of interesting. Again, this is in the status effects uh, table here, and a lot of people ask about this. If you want to look at it for yourself, if you go to, I'll link this in the description, but if you go to here, it's down into status effects. ST, right? Status effects data. I think this is it. Let me look it up one more time. Status effect categories is the name. I think it's this one. Hey, it's this one. So, and then I could just put this link in the description so you guys can see it. But this is where all those caps are stored, and a lot of people get confused about them. So I figured it would be nice to make a video and just have something as a reference at some point, so that people can look back at this and it's documented somewhere, because people tend to lose things. And I will see you guys later. Peace.